Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Goshyama Kunda Radha Kundagiri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Mathura Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai. Vipralamba Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai. Ganga Mayi Ki Jai. Yamuna Mayi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, text number 37. Renounces Tribhir Amuktanam Mimamsata Karmanam Vighatah Shreyasah Papa Lokayor Ubhayoho Kritah Dranaistribhira Muktanam Amimam Sitakarmanam Vighatah Shreyasah Aghatah Shreyasah Papa. Oh yeah, it's sorry. Vighata Shreyasaf Papa
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha
Lokayor Ubhayor Kritaha
Nirnaistrivira Muktanam
Naistrivir Muktanam
Amimam Sitakarmanam
Imam Sitakarmanam
Vighata Shreyasaf Papa
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha
Nirnaistrivira Muktanam
Naistrivir Muktanam
Amimam Sitakarmanam
Imam Sitakarmanam
Vighata Shreyasaf Papa
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha
Nirnaistrivira Muktanam
Nunaistrivir Muktanam
Amimam Sitakarmanam
Amimam Sitakarmanam
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha Nunaistrivir Muktanam
Nirnaistrivira
Tanam
Amimam Sitakarmanam
Amimam Sitakarmanam
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Lokayar Ubhayo Kritaha
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha Rossi can do it.
Naistrivir Amuktanam
Nirnaistrivira Muktanam
Amimam Sita Karmanam
Amimam Sitakarmanam
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Vighata Shreyasa Papa
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha
Lokayor Ubhayo Kritaha
Purushottam. Oh, you did. Sorry. Anybody on Zoom? Okay. Renaihi, from the debts. Tribhi, 3. Amuktanam, of persons not freed.
The person not free
Amimamsita,
Mimamsita
not considering.
not considering
Karmanam,
Karmanam
the path of duty.
path of duty
Vighata,
Vighata
ruin. Shreyasaha, the path of good fortune.
the path of good fortune
Papa,
Papa
O most sinful.
almost simple
Nārada Muni.
Nārada Muni
Lokayoho,
Lokayoho
of the worlds.
the world
Ubhayoho,
Ubhayoho
both.
both
Kritaha,
Krita
done.
done
Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Prajāpati Dakṣa said, "My sons were not at all freed from their 3 debts. Indeed, they did not properly consider their obligations. O Nārada Muni, O personality of sinful action, you have obstructed their progress toward good fortune in this world and the next, because they are still indebted to the saintly persons, the demigods, and their father. As soon as a Brahmana takes birth, he assumes 3 kinds of debts: debts to great saints, debts to the demigods, and debts to his father. The son of a Brahmana must undergo celibacy to clear his debts to the saintly persons. He must perform ritualistic ceremonies to clear his debts to the demigods, and he must beget children to become free from his debts to his father." Prajāpati Dakṣa argued that although the renounced order is recommended for liberation, one cannot attain liberation unless one fulfills his obligations to the demigods, the saints, and his father. Since Daksha's sons had not liberated themselves from these 3 debts, how could Nārada Muni have led them to the renounced order of life? Apparently, Prajāpati Dakṣa did not know the final decision of the śāstras, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Devarshi bhutapta nrinam pitrinam nakinkaro nayam ranicha rajan sarvatmanaya sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihritya kartam. Everyone is indebted to the demigods, to living entities in general, to his family, to the pitas, and so on. But if one fully surrenders to Krishna, Mukunda, who can give one liberation, even if one performs no yajnas, one is freed from all debts. Even if one does not repay his debts, he is freed from all debts if he renounces the material world for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose lotus feet are the shelter of everyone. This is the verdict of the śāstra. Therefore, Nārada Muni was completely right in instructing the sons of Prajāpati Dakṣa to renounce this material world immediately and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unfortunately, Prajāpati Dakṣa, the father of the Haryaśvas and Savalāśvas, did not understand the great service rendered by Nārada Muni. Daksha therefore addressed him as Papa, the personality of sinful activities, and Asadhu, a non-saintly person. Since Nārada Muni was a great saint and Vaishnava, he tolerated all such accusations from Prajāpati Dakṣa. He merely performed his duty as a Vaishnava by delivering all the sons of Prajāpati Dakṣa, enabling them to return home back to Godhead. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Shreshtham Manamapi Shachiputramatra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Murupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Vanja Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So every conditioned soul in the material world, of course in the material world there's only conditioned souls, but or you could say there's no conditioned souls outside the material world. But every conditioned soul has received some kind of benefit from a number of different sources. In this particular verse we're hearing about the saintly persons, the demigods, the Father. But the point is made in śāstra that also basically from all living entities, cows, plants, trees, cows, they give milk, and the trees, they provide shade. Then of course the different demigods providing food and fire and rain, sunshine, moonshine. Society in general, for inculcating values in a person. The parents, of course, mother and father, for giving the body. The great sages for providing knowledge of higher spiritual topics, liberation, etc. So every conditioned soul has received benefit from these different sources, and therefore Shastra gives processes by which to repay these different sources. Because if one receives benefit from somebody, then it incurs a debt, a karmic debt. Somebody has done something good for somebody else, so therefore karmically, whether in this life or the next life, they get that back. And so the Vedas, they give processes by which living entities can repay those sources from which they've received benefits. So for example, for the demigods, one performs homa, or fire sacrifice to worship the demigods. And for the parents and for other living entities, for the forefathers, there's tarpana, and there's shrad, and it's also described for people in general. There's niryagya, or the yagya of inviting people into your home and being very hospitable. And for the sages, there's adhyapana, or study of the Vedic literatures. That's how one repays the sages. It's called Brahma Yagya. So there's all these different yagyas for for repaying the debt that one owes to the various people who have benefited them. And they're very complicated, actually. Those who practice karma kanda, it's a very complicated process because basically you have to take everything into account. I mean, even some Vaishnava Brahmanas too, when they perform Sandhya Vandanam, or when they, at the different Sandhyas of the day, morning, noon, and evening, they perform, I mean, it's like a 20-minute process, basically. All kinds of, like, mudras and, mantras, and you offer obeisances to all the different directions, all kinds of, yeah, it's really, really complicated. And then that also entails performing yajna, at least in one part of the day, performing yajna, and you offer rice cakes to the different devatas to atone for any kind of sin you've performed throughout the day. Specifically, like it's mentioned, like when you're cooking, any sin incurred while cooking, for example, killing the vegetables. Yeah, so there's all these different, it's very complicated because one has to take everything into account. Because if one is following these karma kanda rituals, and if one's under the shelter of this karma kanda, then it's like a razor's edge, because karma it's a material law. It's not conscious. Of course, it's Krishna's law, and Maya's there, but it's just like gravity, basically. If I pick something up and then it falls. So, for example, if one performs some kind of sinful activity, then even if they didn't mean to, still there's a reaction. Maybe the reaction is less, according to their consciousness. And it's described also for brahmanas who are supposed to know. If they perform sinful activities, then the reaction is much greater. For Shudras, it's much less, etc. So it's not like karma is it's not forgiving like like something like a person would be, because it's just a law. Like gravity is not forgiving. If you didn't mean to drop something, then it's still going to fall on the ground, even if you didn't mean to drop it. Prabhupada gives the example, like even if you don't know that fire is hot, like a child doesn't know that fire is hot, but if he sticks his hand in the fire, it'll still get burned. So they have to take everything into account, and therefore their rituals are very complicated, and their whole life is basically centered around atoning for sins that they've performed. And so therefore people often, people from this kind of background, which is the majority, I mean, the majority of people, talking about India, the majority of people kind of under the fold of the Vedic literatures don't practice karma kanda so strictly. But still, the vast majority of people are practicing it to some extent, or at least that's their conception. And so they often criticize devotees, criticize Vaishnavas for giving up, just like Prajāpati Dakṣa here. He's criticizing Nārada Muni for telling the Savalāśvas to give up all this austerity and all this yajna just for some material benefit. He's criticizing Nārada Muni for telling them to give up their responsibility, or what he perceives as their real responsibility. And so the same goes for people in this world. People often criticize the Vaishnavas for avoiding responsibility, giving up their responsibilities. Not even in India, also, not so much in America. In America, the culture isn't so much that one has to like repay their parents. Mostly parents are pretty much okay with whatever their kids do. But in Europe, also there's a big culture that, yeah, you owe me something. The child is indebted to the parents, indebted to the family. And so for the child to give up their responsibility toward their parents, it's a very big thing. And so therefore they criticize. They criticize, and either they criticize for being irresponsible, or they criticize saying that you're just lazy. You don't want to do all these things. You don't want to be responsible and repay your parents, and just because it's a burden. But Nārada Muni, for example, he's also taking on a burden. It's not that Nārada Muni is just kind of living an easygoing life and not doing much and just kind of sitting around. It's difficult to go all around the universe and preach and deliver all the living entities. Nārada Muni, he delivered the entire family line of Swayambhuva Manu, beginning with Priyavrata. So that's no small task. And so similarly, Prabhupada would say, you say we're not working, you say that we're lazy, you say that we're trying to avoid responsibilities, but our responsibility is to save all the fallen conditioned souls. It's no small task. Prabhupada said it's my thankless task. So, in reply to this criticism, the Srimad Bhagavatam says, Yatha turod mula nishechanena tripyanti tat skanda bhujopashaka. That just by watering, for example, when one waters a tree, one doesn't water all the different individual leaves and branches and things like that. There's no use in doing that. First of all, it's a lot of work. And second of all, it's not any more efficient, in fact, it's much less efficient than watering the root of the tree. And when waters the root of the tree, then tripyanti tat skanda bhujopashaka. Then the trunk, skanda, bhuja, the branches, and the upashakas, the twigs, all of them are satisfied just by watering the root. Also, there's this verse, pranopaharacha yatendriyanam, that when one eats, he doesn't chew, or he doesn't offer the food to his hand or even to his mouth. The food goes to the stomach. And from the stomach being nourished, then that nourishment spreads throughout the body. So Krishna, he's the source of everything. Janmandyasya taha. Also, aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Krishna is the source of all the material worlds. Also, sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishta mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedaisha sarvaya hamaiva vedyaha vedanta krit veda vedeva chaham. So everything's coming from Krishna. All the material world, the spiritual world, Krishna's maintaining it. It comes from him. He's maintaining it. He destroys it. Everything is coming from him. By all the Vedas, he's to be known. Everything is coming from, everything's being maintained by him. He's the absolute source of everything. So everything is going on by his power. Everything is going on by his mercy alone. So just like a parent, for example, parents, they may desire to have a particular kind of child, whether it's a boy or a girl, or even like a healthy child. They may desire to have a healthy child or a good-looking child. But
Or all of the above.
yeah, or all of the above, yeah. But the parents, even if they may perform some kind of karma kanda ritual to secure all these things, still, sometimes we see that a child may be born crippled, or a child may be born deformed, or dead, or ugly, or whatever it is. The parents have no control at all over, practically speaking, they have no control at all over what their child is going to look like, act like, etc., even though they desire it. So everything, only by the mercy of the Lord can they receive a child that they like, or can they receive a child at all. Some people, they try and they just can't have a child. Even one's own body is maintained by the Supreme Lord. Like, for example, Prabhupada says in one purport that when the mercy of the Lord is withdrawn, then one suddenly dies. Or they become gravely, gravely injured or sick, or something like that. So there's that Krishna saying, by the grace, there but by the grace of God go I. So only by the mercy of Krishna is everything going on, even our own body. Like I know one devotee, he, when he was, I think he was like 12 years old or something, his mother very suddenly, just one day she was there, one day she wasn't. She had a brain aneurysm, and she just very suddenly died. I think within a day or something. In the morning she was alive, and yeah. Then she just had a brain aneurysm. By the evening she was dead. So we don't know how long we have. We don't know when this body will die because it's being maintained only by the mercy of the Lord. But people, they're very anxious to receive all kinds of material benedictions from offering obeisances or offering oblations to the demigods, to the forefathers, etc. And that's why they perform all these different yagyas. Because by offering oblations to the forefathers or offering oblations to the demigods, then one's sense gratification in this life is secured. Because they're repaying, they're showing their gratitude to those entities who have bestowed that sense gratification to them in the first place. And so by performing these yagyas, their sense gratification is maintained and their future sense gratification is ensured. But one who's taken shelter of Krishna, one who is a Vaishnava, who knows the real goal of life, they have a completely different aim. They have a completely different consciousness. Their consciousness isn't trying to continually secure sense of gratification. Their consciousness is trying to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, they have no need of performing all these different yagyas because they're under the shelter of Krishna. When one takes shelter of Krishna, not only is all of his karma completely wiped, but then from that point on, Krishna takes charge of doling out his karma. So he's not under the laws of material nature. He's under Krishna's shelter directly. There may be some token reaction, like Prabhupada gives the example if one, cuts their finger or something like that, then maybe their whole arm or something had to be cut off. That was the reaction that they were due. But Krishna, he gives some token reaction. And so therefore, devotees, they don't perform all these different yagyas. Or at least they don't perform in exactly the same way. They perform them with Krishna in the center. Like, for example, Gopal Bhatta Goswami wrote this book, Shatkriya Deepika, wherein he outlines all the different samskaras, where he outlines all the different, like how to perform Shraddha. From a Vaishnava perspective, with Krishna in the center. So when one performs Tarpana or when one performs Shraddha, they're worshipping their forefathers. But when one performs Shraddha according to Vaishnava Smriti, then they're worshipping Krishna and they're offering prasad, they're offering the remnants, pinda, to the forefathers. And therefore they're receiving benefit so that they can develop their own Krishna consciousness. So like this, devotees, they do everything with Krishna in the center, and therefore the only yagya that they perform really is Sankirtan yagya. Actually, Jiva Goswami says that all these different yagyas, even if one doesn't know any of the mantras or if one doesn't want to channel the mantras, they can just chant Hare Krishna. Whether if they're performing deity worship, they can just, you don't have to say any of the mantras, you can just chant Hare Krishna. Or for whatever yagya you're performing, you just chant Hare Krishna, because all of the mantras in all of the Vedas are contained within the Hare Krishna mantra. It's the essence of all mantras. Because Krishna says, Vedaisha sarvara hameva vedyaha. By all the Vedas I am to be known. And therefore, Krishna is the goal of the Vedas, and therefore the goal of all mantras, the purpose of all mantras is the satisfaction of Krishna. For one to realize Krishna. So therefore, this Sankirtan yagya is wholly and solely meant for the pleasure of Krishna. Of course, Namashintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. The Hare Krishna mantra, the holy name of Krishna, it's a Chintamani gem. It can fulfill whatever desires one has, but just because it's so powerful, but its real purpose, it's the real consciousness one should have when performing Sankirtan Yagya is to obtain Krishna Prema. By chanting, we should be becoming more detached from sense gratification, and we should be developing more of an attraction to Krishna, because that's the nature of the holy name. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purno Shuddha Nitya Mukta Bhinattan Namanamino. It's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. It's that means by which one can relish rasa with Krishna, which is what Krishna is all about. He's Rasa Vaisaha. He's Lila Purushottama. Everything he does, even the creation of the material world, even the bondage and the liberation of the living entities, everything he does is for rasa. Everything he does is to relish love, loving relationships with his devotees. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came to this world for two reasons. One reason was to preach the Yuga Dharma, to propagate Harinam Sankirtan. But the main reason he came is because he wanted to experience the love that Srimati Radharani feels for him. That's why he came. Krishna himself with the mood and the sentiments of Srimati Radharani. So by chanting, we should have the goal in mind that we want to develop a relationship with Krishna, and that we want to become more and more detached from sense gratification, and become more attached to Krishna's sense gratification, Krishnendriya Priti, Krishna's sense gratification. And when we do this, Krishna says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yena mam upayanti te. That when one endeavors with determination constantly, satata, over and over and over again, constantly, then Krishna gives the intelligence, he gives realization by which one can attain him. So, very soon, when one is chanting the holy name, he becomes detached completely from sense gratification and his heart softens. And when his heart softens, he develops emotion for Krishna. And he develops an attraction to serve Krishna in a particular way, following the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. So this is our goal, to follow in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan and love Krishna like they did. Krishna was their whole life. In fact, they loved Krishna so much that they didn't even know who he was. They didn't even know that he was God. Mother Yashoda, there's a story, Krishna, before bed, Mother Yashoda was reading to him some story. She was reading about Ram Lila, and she was saying, there was this king, Dasharatha, and there was, and then Ram and Lakshmana, they went to the forest, and they were in exile, and then Ravana came and he stole Sita, and when Mother Yashoda got to that part, then Krishna became ecstatic, in the mood of Lord Ram. And he stood up on the bed and he started yelling, Lakshmana, go grab my bow, I'll kill that demon. He's yelling like this. He's, very angry. And Mother Yashoda, what does she do? The Supreme Personality of Godhead here in the mood of Lord Ram, what does she do? She, gives him a whack on the head and says, lie down and go to sleep. So the Vrajavasis, they love Krishna so much that they don't even know who he is. They're so absorbed in love for him. And also, an amazing example of this is the Kaliya Damana Lila, when Krishna chastised the Kaliya serpent. Krishna, he dove into the water, and the serpent, he was fighting with Kaliya under the water for 2 whole hours. And when they saw him go in the water, when the Vrajavasis saw Krishna wrapped in the coils of Kaliya, they were so distressed, as if like there's this Sanskrit saying, I don't know the Sanskrit, but it's basically, so this man, he's on fire, and he's saying the world's on fire, but it's just him, it's just his body, that's on fire. But to him, his body is his whole life, because that's his whole experience, that's his whole frame of reference, But in Vrindavan, for the Vrajavasis, Krishna is their whole life, their whole experience, their whole frame of reference, their whole reality is Krishna. So when Krishna was there, wrapped in the coils of Kaliya, they were experiencing as if their life was over, as if they were dead, because they thought Krishna was gone. So this love, of course, is not a cheap thing. It's not like mundane love, and it's what is it? Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavatamati Kriyatam Yadikuto. Yeah, Kriyatam Yadikutopi Labi Tatra Loyam Api Mulyam Ekalam Janmakoti Sukritarna Labhyate. That this Krishna Bhakti Rasa is extremely exalted, and it's obtained only by greed. One has to be very, very, very extremely greedy for obtaining Krishna Bhakti. And this greed is not so easily developed. Janmakoti Sukritarna Labhyate. That by birth after birth after birth, by thousands, millions of unlimited births of performing all kinds of pious activity, it can't be obtained. So it's obtained only by the mercy of Krishna. And one has to follow, of course, all of the regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regulative principles, rising early for Mangalarti, as Srila Prabhupada emphasized. But by doing this, by following these principles, then one can develop this consciousness of Krishna, this attraction for Krishna Bhakti Rasa. And because this is the goal of life, because this is the highest end of spiritual realization, then just like a servant of the king, he doesn't have any obligation to the minor kings of the different states and stuff, because he's serving the king of all of them. So devotees of Krishna, pure devotees, they have no obligation to the demigods. They have nothing to do with them. They have nothing to do with this material world at all, or their obligations in this material world. Their obligation is to Krishna, and therefore all of their activities are performed with Krishna in the center. All of their duties are centered around Krishna. Everything is centered around Krishna, their whole life. So this is our goal, and the main means of attaining it is the process of Sankirtan Yajna. So, yeah, we can have questions and comments now, I guess. If there's any. Okay. Anything? Oh, Mukunda has something.
Well, oh, sorry, this isn't really formulated.
It's really loud.
Hare Krishna.
It's just really loud. Here, I'll just ask. I'll repeat it. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Interesting.
I think it's just too loud. That's why. Just you can ask and I'll repeat. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Is there somebody online with a question? Okay.
Well, it struck me before that it can seem or even be a bit of a cop-out if I use this term, or not this term, but this point, that on one hand we can say, oh, well, in Vedic culture this and in Vedic culture that, but then if someone asks me about it, then I can say, well, I'm surrendering to Krishna, so I don't need to worry about that. But so that could apply to a lot of duties. I mean, there are duties to, even like we might repeat, oh, well, it's a grahasta's duty to, and maybe it's easier for a brahmachari to repeat how it's a grahasta's duty, as mentioned, and that that the grahasta should, before eating oneself, should walk outside, call 3 times, is anyone hungry, is anyone hungry, and then after, if no one needs any food, then you can eat as a grahasta. So that being a grahasta's duty. But then, if see, as a brahmachari, I can say, "Oh, that's a grihastha's duty. Grihastha should, But then, if someone says, "What about you?" I say, "Oh, I'm a brahmachari. I'm surrendering to Krishna." But then and there are a lot of things like that about, well, really, it's it's in proper culture. The son would take care of the mother and so on. And then, as a brahmachari, it's easy to get out of that because, well, I'm just surrendering to Krishna. Mm-hmm. But then, even if a devotee, even if one's a devotee but then becomes a grihastha, still, it doesn't seem to me. It seems that one could say the same thing. Well, I'm no longer I'm not a brahmachari. I'm a grihastha, but I'm still surrendering to Krishna, and therefore I'm not going to fuss about these different duties as a son. Mm-hmm. So it's not so clear to me to what degree we should, a devotee grihastha should worry about satisfying one's parents. Here with the Savalāśvas and Haryaśvas, okay, they're becoming fully renounced. That's one thing. But with devotees who then have, non-devotee parents, then it's less clear to me. And who was it who, one of the 6 Goswamis who, I think it was one of the 6 Goswamis, right? Gopalbhatta Goswami. See, he was told to go serve his parents, but his parents were devotees. So, this is the thought. I don't know to what degree it just seems like any devotee could use that line. Well, yeah, this is culture. This is culture. Then, well, how about you? What does it apply to you? Well, no, I'm surrendering to Krishna. So then, what about for grihasthas?
Yeah,
not a great, well-formulated question or point, but I don't know what to think about that.
One thought I had, and this is definitely not, an absolutely, completely covers all bases, satisfying answer to your question. But one thought I had was that one should perform their duties to the extent that they don't get in the way of one's Krishna consciousness. Now, that's different for different people. But like, for example, if one's like, okay, one's, and this is, I'm sure you already, but for instance, like if somebody's parents, somebody says, okay, well, I have a duty to my parents, but your parents want you to be like a, I don't know, extreme example, like a butcher or something like that. You have to continue the family line of being a butcher, something like that. Then, of course, you don't do that. But even like, my parents want me to do certain other things that would, take up a lot, like just like an unreasonable amount of my time or my consciousness, sacrifice my consciousness. Like Narottam Das Thakur, of course, Narottam Das Thakur's parents are devotees, but they, they saw he was in ecstasy and they wanted to rub snake oil on his body because they thought he was diseased. And Narottam Das Thakur says, "Come on, don't rub snake oil on my body. You can't do that." So that's a thought. I'm sure. I mean, I'm definitely not covering the entire topic, but that's something I can think of. Now, Gopalbhatta Goswami, like I mentioned, has that book, Kshatriya Sara Deepika, which that's more on the ritualistic side in terms of offering, pinda and things like that. But in terms of like practically, like for example, this thing of like taking care of parents, I don't know if I have so much to say about that. That's my thought.
Here's a thought. Oh boy, this is a loud one. Is there another? Here's a quote from the Krishna book, and it's Krishna speaking. When after Krishna killed Kamsa, I think this is, and then he's apologizing to Vasudeva and Devaki that he wasn't able to take care of them. Unfortunately, being ordered by our fate, we could not be raised by our own parents to enjoy childhood pleasures. Dear father and mother, we can't repay. A man cannot repay his debt to his parents, from whom he gets this body, which can bestow upon him all the benefits of material existence. According to human injunctions, this human form of life enables one to perform all kinds of religious activities. Okay, going forward. If after growing up, a son does not try to satisfy his parents by his actions or by an endowment of riches, he is surely punished after death by the superintendent of death, and made to eat his own flesh. If a person is able to care for or give protection to old parents, a chaste wife, children, and the spiritual master, Brahmins, and other dependents, but does not do so, he is considered already dead, although he is supposedly breathing. Now, I'm not sure how all of that integrates into what we're speaking, but it's certainly pertinent. And I know that for a fact that many devotees, they took it very seriously. And when their parents were old, they went and took care of them, even though they had, duties in ISKCON. So it may be, but then there's this verse, Devashi Bhutapinna Patrinam. If one completely surrenders to Krishna, then all the debts are covered. So it's I think, it's case by case.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, case by case. Yes, for sure.
Thank you for nice class.
Okay.
I wanted to share something which I have been, of course I'm going through such kind of dilemma, and I always try to reference. So I think Tribhuda Prabhu is saying that what is the debt to the parents, like we need to understand, right? So as per, they give the body, and Prabhupada often mentions that if one produces a child but cannot deliver it from clutches of material world, then that's not a right duty, right? So the duty of the parents is to allow children to deliver himself. That is a repaying, so that they don't suffer the sinful act of producing a child, which is not gonna go into spiritual life, right? That's one point. And then when we become grihastha, we have a lot of responsibility, in our personal life, and we are away from parents, right? So I heard, I think Prabhupada mentioning somewhere, I don't remember, but he said that if you cannot serve your parents physically, then at least give your portion of your money to them, to be able to maintain. Otherwise you are incurring the sinful kind of, since you are capable of doing it but you are not able to do physically, so do by money. That's also a service, because then they would be at least satisfied that my child wants to do it, but just because of certain situation don't want to do kind of anything. And the third point about these demigods, the responsibility to a demigod. I was in India, and there was a senior devotee. He is now Banprastha, and he was sharing his experience of how he's around 60 years now, and still his father want him to worship Maya Devi, Durga Devi, because he worshipped. So and father tries him to kind of go, he tries different ways of inviting him of those ceremonies where demigods are worshipped, because that's their home thing. What he says that he is respectful towards demigod. He sits there like while just as a respect to the parents and the people of the family, but he said, I never participate in any of those rituals. I'm just sitting there chanting my mantra, being respectful, but I'm not going to, accept them as a Supreme Personality or someone end of my spiritual, destination. So that's how they kind of manage. That they shared this story that just be respectful and follow like injunctions in Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and śāstras. And otherwise it's very hard.
Yeah, thank you.
What it seems like to me is, and this is what I said yesterday, this comment, and this is going to integrate into a really good question, and that is, there is a choice that you got to make. Because if one, excuse me, let me remove the first class. If one, grahasva, whatever, brahmana, and for some economical reason, you return home to take care of your parents on their last. It goes with, it kind of complements, like the basketball goes with the ball player. The shoes go with the runner. The water goes with the lake. However, Pada did say to respect all economic facets of different religions. But if one's duty, okay, prescribe and subscribe duty to perform as a Krishna conscious, okay, and your parents has a complete, total different lifestyle, you're going to fall under the blanket of that. I mean, there's no way that one is going to remove a screw from the Twin Towers and expect for the entire building to remain. So one has to make a choice, a decision, and you said it, sense gratification. Once sense gratification has been desensitized, and not desensitized, you've been deprogrammed from that material conception of what the world is, hey, they're just going to have to remain in tears because I'm not going to flatter myself or take the blue pill and go back into your world and leave all the rest of the remaining. Look, you've changed lives. You don't know how many lives you're changing. Just because somebody don't hit that subscribe button doesn't mean that they're not watching. You have millions of people that are watching you right now and that are hearing me. So my question is, what is the prescribed duty? At some point, at what percentage do we dedicate ourselves to someone who has complete, total different, going somewhere else than us?
Well, we can help them by giving them Krishna consciousness. We can, if somebody, not just parents, but other people, if somebody is not Krishna conscious themselves, then the way that devotees help them is by trying to give them Krishna consciousness, by giving them prasadam mainly, or books or something like that. So, yeah, that's the main way that we help those who aren't in Krishna consciousness. But, yeah, Mukunda, you have something?
Sorry. No, I like what you said there with that. I was also just thinking with my question, actually, I think what Purushottam Prabhu brought up is kind of especially relevant to my question. And so, actually, if you could find that reference you were saying with Prabhupada saying, if you can't serve directly, give money, I'd be interested to read that, because that's something I was thinking about, is that on one hand there's a duty for grihastas to then take care of vanaprasthas and sannyasis and brahmacharis, and it's expected that, and at least culturally, we don't encourage people to work past 50, just to work until they drop. But then, if for a Krishna conscious grihasta, to what degree is he duty bound, or should he or she give money to parents if those parents are engaged in sinful activity? I mean, the clear example is eating meat. So to what degree is it a Krishna conscious grihasta's duty to give financial support to parents who eat meat, will spend it on various forms of sinful activity? So if you could find that, Purushottam, that would be helpful, I think. And I think my first question, more succinctly put, would be that here it's saying that one who fully surrenders to Krishna has no duties to one's family or society. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, our own śāstra says that grihastas have duty to family and society. So what about a grihasta who is fully dependent or fully surrendered to Krishna? Does that grihasta, do we emphasize more the śāstric junction that as a grihasta has duties to family and society, or the fully surrendered to Krishna part, that then therefore doesn't have any duties? Yeah.
I mean, one thing, definitely...
Of course, we emphasize both, I guess, to what degree?
Yeah. I mean, definitely... I mean, there's kind of like two aspects of indebtedness. One is like a ritualistic or like a karmic indebtedness. So in that way, devotees are not indebted at all. Like, they don't have any karmic indebtedness to like the forefathers or the demigods or anything like that, because they're serving Krishna. On a practical level, though, like specifically with family, I don't really know. I've thought about it, but to be honest with you, I just haven't really. Yeah.
And I also wasn't expecting anyone here to know. It's just kind of, if someone has references, we can maybe better parse this out, because I don't know if there really is a clear, at least to me.
I was just thinking that each ashram has their own specific line of duties that they must perform. As far as grihastas being Krishna conscious and performing their duties, I think that the duties that they would normally perform are still there, but if they're practicing Krishna consciousness, the added duty would be providing them with Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there's fine lines between what a brahmachari would do versus a grihasta, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I would just say, make your, give them Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, everything else remains the same.
Okay. Can I? I'm sorry.
I think as Prabhu was saying, that the degree, one should be very honest to ourselves, like themselves, that what degree I am surrendered to Krishna, right? A brahmachari may be 100% dedicated for Krishna. They are not taking any paycheck. They are serving, selflessly, voluntarily. But in case of grihastha, if I am having money, I'm maintaining my children's, my wife, family life, very nice. But when it comes to serving others, like your parents or Banaprastha or sannyasis, I am lazy. I am trying to use śāstras to circumvent certain duties, which is, because in one way I'm doing it, maintaining my family, but when it comes to maintaining someone else selflessly, I'm using śāstras as a tool to kind of overcome that duty. So one has to be very honest. It's very hard to find a grihastha who is 100% fully surrendered to Krishna. Like you are literally not doing too much, or just serving Krishna, and everything is being fulfilled. They are maintaining a lot of material things, their bank balance, asset, everything. So that is one point. And the second point about how much to give the parents, like money, like if they are doing nonsense. And so what I learned from talking to devotees is that if they are doing nonsense, you have to just say, excuse me, please forgive me, but I cannot support this. Okay? Giving a right advice and then staying a little away, because otherwise it will keep on going. And keep offering them these spiritual advices or opportunities, whether they take it, don't take it, because Krishna is watching everything, demigods are watching everything, that I'm genuinely providing them opportunities by putting my hard-earned money financially to be, suppose, invite them to go pilgrimage, invite them to go to, offer a trip, okay, do you want to go Vrindavan, do you want to Mayapur, a nice trip? They reject it, okay. But one tries that way. We should not care about results, whether it's going to happen. Maybe it may happen, maybe it may not happen. It's just like trying duty, but by duty we cannot expect a result. Like, okay, if I'm offering them prasad, offering them nice behavior and everything, they should become Krishna consciousness. Moment we start thinking that, then it becomes problem. Then we are trying to control the result, but just by doing something from one side. So yeah.
One thing that came to mind based on what you said was, because I mentioned, okay, there's these two aspects. There's like the practical, like taking care of your mother and father, versus like the karmic kind of like, ritualistic aspect of indebtedness and repaying debt. But I guess I was just thinking, is there much of a difference? Because with the forefathers, it's not like they're not there. They are actually there, and we are, and by performing like, the Shraddha ceremony, in the Karma Kanda way, then we're securing their sense gratification. And this is just a thought. I'm not saying this is like but you're securing their sense gratification by securing their spot there in Pitraloka. So, but we don't do that. So then it's understood that they all fall from Pitraloka. those who, at least for, those who are kind of like performing those rituals. No, I don't know if any of my forefathers are in Pitraloka, but.
How what did you do as a duty? That's your duty.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to give up to Krishna consciousness for that. But
Right.
you do as a duty.
Right.
That is your duty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You made a significant point in your opening, and that was the material conditioned body. And then these great points are being made, and I don't think anyone has taken heed to it. And then Mukunda has made a point and said, and then you even said later on, hey, look, I'm not going to be here preparing meat meals for you. And Mukunda says, well, I'm not going to be not heed to it, but similarly along these lines that, does rearing and taking care for a Brahmana, for someone who's not Krishna consciousness, come with conditions and stipulations? I'm not going to put myself at Burger King. Your point was a butcher. I'm not going to accept a butcher job. I could have taken tree jobs at so many cutting down trees, but I said no, because I understand the karmic consequence to it. So, I mean, do you fill the pool up first and then jump in, or wait for the water to just come in and then go, oh, it's time to get out the pool now? These things have effects, as you said. There's one that even still through Krishna consciousness. And even when we're not aware, when people aren't aware, then I say, their actions are generating karmic effects and consequences. So at what point does this become game? Like, does this, do you actually say, okay, here's the book, but I gotta be careful what I highlight, what I'm going to do amongst people that may be foreign to the Vedic culture, or to a culture that was once, the world culture. This is culture. Practical culture. So at what point is it facilitated? Do you start to really implement it? Okay, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, and I'm not doing that, but I'll be here.
Yes, so I wasn't bringing this, like I said, I wasn't bringing this topic up as if
I think,
make a clear rubric. But it is something that's been more curious to me recently, that as a brahmachari, it's very easy for me to kind of not think about it, because I can say, to what degree do I need to give money to my parents? Well, if I don't have any money, then I can just say, oh, well, you don't have to think about it. But then, the idea that, what I always forget, like the breakdown, of all the money you have, you can break down this much for, family purposes, this much for for spreading Krishna consciousness.
50% for the Vaishnavas, 25% for emergencies, 25% for...
Yeah, and so that 50% for Vaishnavas, in some cases, Prabhupada says to spread Krishna consciousness. But let's say 50% to the Vaishnavas and 25% to family. It seems like, okay, so the 25%. It seems like, okay, well, why give any? On one hand, as a grihasta, if one's going to be a Krishna conscious grihasta, then one's supposed to know that all this money isn't mine, it's Krishna's. And therefore, what am I doing if I'm giving it to this charity or that? Mm-hmm. But then you could say the same would apply to family. If it's Krishna's money, not my money, then I wouldn't take money out of the hundi and give it to, just some non-devotee. So this money also is Krishna's money, and I should be using it for service. But then one can, at it. But then the difficulty is, it seems like it really requires maturity, because there's that pastime, apparently, at least Srila Prabhupada, according to Bhadranarayan Swami, sounds likely. Srila Prabhupada, there's the one young boy in L.A., and Srila Prabhupada gave him, I don't know how much money it would have been, he gave him a little money, took some money out of his pocket and gave him a little money and said, go buy yourself a red fire engine, a red fire truck, something like that, a little toy truck. And he said, oh, children love the color red, And but I was thinking, that's Krishna's money. You can't give it to a kid to go buy a little toy, And similarly, the idea that a grihasta, there's the idea that a grihasta should buy. Anyway, I don't want to get too far afield, but there are things like that. It seems like okay, well, it's not black and white, and that, therefore it confuses me. So that's why I brought it up, that it's really not clear to me.
But it's not only the money they need
Exactly.
physical help sometimes.
Exactly. I mean,
you don't have to break any of your rules, whatever you have followed.
Well, actually,
as a devotee, you keep on following that, and you don't have to provide them meat and eggs and fish and those kind of things, because you don't follow that. So, I mean, that's your duty.
Well, that's actually,
Physically, you can't be there, have emotional support for them.
Yeah, anyone online, Asha Mataji's here, and she was saying, well, it's not just a matter of, it's not like the only thing you can offer your family members and non-devotees, non-devotees to whom you have some obligation or some duty. It's not like the only thing you have to offer them is money. You can offer them your time, your emotional support, being there for them, and so on. And then actually, Purushottam Prabhu mentioned something like that, which also made me think that, well, even as a brahmachari, largely we try to remember that even my own time isn't mine, and like all of my time is for Krishna, and therefore it's again, it's like one of those things where it's not black and white, and therefore one needs to really be mature to see how to balance such a thing. Of course, it's a common fallacy to say, oh, just balance. Okay, but it doesn't really answer the question, what is balance? So it seems like that's naturally a thought in my mind. Okay, well, if my time, I could always be spending it doing some more service for the temple. I mean, there's plenty of cleaning I could be doing around the temple, whether I'm brahmachari or grihastha.
But
so there's
parents are suffering at the same time.
Exactly, and so Asha Mataji says, well, if your parents are suffering at the same time,
That also is your duty.
so then it brings up this question we're bringing up. Asha Mataji said, okay, but if your parents are suffering at the same time, and therefore brings up the same question that we're back to what degree do we balance this person's discomfort or this person's preferences and so on, versus this idea of fully surrendering to Krishna? What does that look like? So it's not completely clear. I mean, definitely, like these things are clear, like these principles of being there.
Stage of their life, sometimes they just need emotionally somebody to be there. It's not necessarily they need your money, and if you're physically there, you go 1 hour to see them. It just makes their day. That my son cared, he's there for me. So I don't think Krishna is against that.
Yeah, so Asha Mataji is saying that, well, one can be, serving Krishna, surrender to Krishna, and still like to go out of your way to be there, go spend an hour with your, this person or that person to whom you're, obligated. 1 second, please. Anyway, they're saying that clearly, like, how difficult is it to do this? But still, the question's still, well, what about, could I give them 5 hours of my time? Could I be there every day? Could I do all of their cooking for them? Like, you could always, and so it's difficult, So you could...
If you're Krishna conscious, your family is suffering at the same time, they are dying, they don't have anybody at home, nobody has somebody to cook for them, or nobody's there to take them to the bathroom, or help them out. What good is then God consciousness only?
Yeah,
you have to be human at the same time too, it's a humanity. So if we don't do our duty for our parents, I'm not talking about that you break any rules, you still follow everything you follow in the temple. You still follow. And you try your parents also they follow that. If they are eating meat, you don't give them a meat. You make a vegetarian food for them. You don't put any onions and garlic and anything. So you follow everything yours, but if they need you at the time of their last moments, I think that's your duty.
Yeah, and then the question still becomes, what is their last moments also? Because it could be, what if it's 20 years of their life versus, 1 month of their life? All these things. That's why I'm saying it doesn't seem to me that it's such a clear thing. But it seems to me that you're presenting it as a very clear thing. It's very clear. They're just at the end of their life. Just go help them out. But to me, it doesn't seem quite fair to say it's so clear like that, because one devotee, his mother was in bad health, and so he went to serve him, and then he was with her for 7 years, and he didn't return to his services for 7 years.
If you go there even the 7 years, he can still follow Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
He can make his parents also to follow.
Can I say something, please?
Cletus, give me a second. Just let her finish.
Like Amogha Lila in Delhi, sometime I watch his on the YouTube his videos.
Yeah.
He say he goes to see his parents time to time. They show him his parents, his sisters, Krishna conscious, but they are not at the level. He has left the family and he is living in the temples and all. But he say he does visit his parents time to time, go to see them how they are doing.
Yeah.
So Because otherwise your parents are also hurt. They brought you in the world, they raised you, they did everything for you possible they can do. Whom they can
Very, very briefly, I understand what you're saying. Very good point. I'm not going to name the direct disciple, but it's someone that I know that I've been under for many of years. It's so easy to just say, well, this is what it is, until it actually presents itself. Like people say, well, this is what I will do if a tsunami comes. But when it's over your head, then everything that you believe, everything is put online. That's when it's put to test. So this direct disciple, this Prabhupada disciple's father, she went to go take care of her father until his last day. Then her mom, she goes, Virginia, take care of her mom. Now her son is in Australia, famous devotee, received 2 Grammys, had to have surgery for cancer. So she's currently there taking care of him. And you want to know, I said the same thing. I said, hey, look, you enjoy traveling, you enjoy preaching, you enjoy doing all these things for these people. You know, get back out there and go hit the road and go Krishna conscious travel. And she said, no, I have a responsibility. And not just because it may be her zodiac sign, no. It's that someone who truly understands. I truly understand what you're saying. I don't want to take care of my parents. But if it comes to the point to where I think everybody has to what extent. But I understand what Mukunda is saying. I'm not going to give you $100 every day. And you utilizing that $100 to go buy your cigarettes and your stuff and your meat eating, then what is that $100 can be allocated is being misappropriated now. I don't want to misappropriate Krishna's Lakshmi for the temple money, but still, I have to commend this devotee, this direct disciple, because her son is very important, and he's back out there again now. So I think there's several points being, 6 significant points being made, and I agree with what she's saying. I agree with what Mukunda is saying. I agree with what the Brahmin here is saying, to what extent, and what conditions are there with it. Yeah. Yeah, we know. Right. Correct.
Well, I should clarify. I don't totally agree with what you're saying, Asha Mataji, even though I think you've added a really good aspect to the conversation. At least the verses and purports recently have been emphasizing that the tendency of people is to only see material duty to family and to emphasize that beyond what they could be doing spiritually. So that's what the emphasis has been in the recent verses and purports, and that's why this conversation. Yeah. So.
It's not good to ignore them at the time. Don't give up your Krishna consciousness. You do everything you're calling. Don't give up that. Maybe even you can have a little bit of emphasize on their last minute. If they become Krishna conscious also.
So the reason I even brought up the topic actually is because the verses and purports, Srila Prabhupada's really emphasizing the opposite of what you're saying. Srila Prabhupada's really emphasizing the opposite. The Daksha's upset, saying, these are my sons. And you just sent them to just go engage fully in spiritual life and go back to Godhead. But they have obligations, not just to me, but all of my ancestors. What about us? And Nārada Muni, what are you doing? How are you a saintly person? And you could say, how are you human? Because you're telling them, cut out your family duties. Your father told you to do this and benefit the family. Just give it up. You guys are qualified. Just go back to Godhead. And that's what Nārada Muni is saying. It's as against what society would say as human as possible. And that's what Prabhupada's emphasizing. That's why I brought up the opposite, kind of what your point. But I think that you kind of went to the opposite, like even further down, where. So definitely. Yeah, yes. But then the question is still, how do you, I guess my bringing it up in the first place was, how do you balance that with, it seems there's some suggestion of what you're saying, human being there, even material service for people, as a devotee and so on. So there's this place. But I worry that that some of the we don't want to make statements that are the exact opposite of what Prabhupada's saying here. That's my only concern. But I agree. That's why I brought it up also. That we don't want.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. While we were on this topic still, I wanted to say that something that's been in my mind is that when you take to Krishna consciousness, as opposed to the material conception of life, then you are essentially paying back all of your ancestors or your parents, providing them recompense without needing to be there. I understand it's kind of difficult and also impossible sometimes to be there for them.
Who is this, by the way? I actually don't recognize your voice. Who is this online? Okay, no worries. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for contributing that very much. Okay, I'm sorry for making this go on so long. Thank you everyone for helping. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thanks, Asha Mataji.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.